I'm WG and this is a CZN character showcase. There are only 16 days left, a little over 2 weeks until the game fully releases, and we have Beryl as our showcase target for today. Let me be honest with you here, she was my least favorite character design wise, but even then, characters all have something to it. They all have something unique. They all have something that makes you go like, I could see myself playing this character for a round or two no matter what. So let's talk about the 4-star Beryl, who is a ranger, which is pretty much as obvious as it is, more of a ranged attack or even gun focused unit, as well as the Justice faction, which means she deals more damage against targets weak to Justice, as well as also more tenacity damage, which is an extra bar below an enemy that can help you a bit in battle. So, what is she all about? What can she do? First off, we start in with 2 attack skills, 1 attack skill dealing 100% damage, and then a 2-cost basic attack card at 220% damage, followed by a shield skill. So those are the 3 basic cards, and then we have the special cards starting with the opening attack. The retain modifier of the card is by far the most important part to her kit. She is all about that retain / preserve mechanic, which we'll get into further. So retain means if you do not play this card during your current turn, it stays in hand until you play it or until you discard it through other card effects voluntarily. So normally this card does 150% damage in the turn you pull it, but in the turn after, if preserved, you also do a 120% extra attack. Extra attacks are also something you're going to hear more and more with the next characters on the list going towards launch, but the keywords here are retain and preserve. Preserve is what happens when you retain a retain card in your hand. Wow. So then we have the charge shot. You deal 200% damage, or if you have it from last turn, you deal 100% additional, so 300% total. Then we have the guilty pleasure, you could say snack card, which the tag exhaust, meaning you can play this card once per fight and then it is gone. You won't be able to draw it back, but you can draw 3 cards, which is quite a lot of cards at a 0 cost play value. Unlimited firepower, the legendary skill, allows you to gain a shield worth 100% of the character's defense, and then the next attack card you use deals plus 80% damage. So any attack card of your team, doesn't have to be hers, could be anyone, so any with this attack tag right here is going to deal 80% more damage. And then we have the, you could say, character identity card in the purple one, and that is the heavy weapon specialist, which creates a opening shot and a charge shot. Opening shot is the name of the card in the very top right, whereas charge shot is the name in the bottom left. So then you also grant them exhaust, meaning the moment you play them, they actually get sent into the banished pile, so you won't get them back. But they will have the retain tag, meaning you don't have to play them in the turn you get them. Furthermore, opening found becomes a 0 cost, where charge shot becomes a 1 cost card. And that already wraps up her basics, bringing us to the ultimate. The ultimate just straight up does 350% damage to all enemies, especially in the beginning of the game, and with farm stages, having a huge AoE damage multiplier can be very, very useful. So, opening found first upgrade, you deal 240% damage straight up, and then if you have preserved this card from the last turn, 180%. Whereas the second one deals 240% and an extra attack for 120%, meaning you pretty much get a improved version of the base card for turn 1 when you pull it, but you can preserve it to reduce the cost from 1 to 0, which also means that this card exactly costs you nothing if you get it through the heavy weapon specialist, because then the cost is already 0. Though I am still quite sure that if you actually generate cards through a special card, they do not have the epiphany effect on top. But that brings us to the third card, where you deal 120% damage, then an extra attack for 120, and then you can preserve it to increase the extra attack damage to 190%. And the interesting part here is this should increase the damage by 70% every single turn you preserve this. The same is obviously true if we go back to all these cards. It is 200% the first turn, then 300, then 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. You get that, right? So at least for the charge shot, it is a stacking effect. So then we still have this right here, where you deal 240% damage, or you preserve it to add an additional 80% every turn you keep it on hand, or a upgrade card. Again, upgrade cards tend to be the most interesting, or potentially even the strongest out of those, and that is when a card is preserved, you deal a extra damage attack of 200% to a random enemy. And the way this works is there is a lot of characters in this game, or specifically there is most likely Beryl here, and then also a 5-star called Orleya, who really do tend to play around with this retain mechanic quite a lot. And what that means is if you use the upgrade or the opening found upgrade and then have 5 different cards on your hand that you keep until the next turn, that is 1000% of damage in 5 different extra attacks just due to this upgrade card. So if you have the opening found and you just keep retaining, you're going to pretty much get free damage at no AP cost whatsoever. Bringing us to charged shot. So here, pretty simple, 300% damage every turn plus 150, meaning 450, 600, 750, 900, you get the deal. Then the cost reduction down to 1, whereas you get the chain effect. The chain effect is, as far as I know, playing this card after another card increases this card's damage by 100%, and it's something that I guess moves a bit away from her whole preserve retain shenanigan. Then we have a upgrade for this card to deal 450% damage, and then if you preserve this card, you reduce the cost by 1 each time you preserve it. Though the important part here is, you can kind of already see it, this card will cost 2 and then deal 450% damage, whereas this card will also cost 2 and deal 450, but this can grow to 600%, where this one gets stuck at 450 while only reducing the cost, so it has the weakest growth potential. Then we have 300% damage, and then preserve damage plus 300%, so the turn you pull it 300, this turn after it's already 600%, but no further growth is possible after this one. And then here you deal 200% damage, and then this card, honestly, I'm not even quite sure what this is all about. You do shock 1, and then preserve damage plus 100%, 1 additional FC shock. It looks crazy, but overall what that means is you just deal 100% additional damage each time you preserve it, while adding an additional shock to this. Though unfortunately I can't quite actually tell you what shock does. Yeah, honestly, I have no idea what shock does, but it sounds like a DOT. Though, then again, it's not like a super big part of her kit or anything you see anywhere else besides on this very specific card. Here we have Guilty Pleasure, which adds 1 morale, which means for the whole duration of the fight, your damage is going to be increased by 20% for any and all multipliers, and that effect stays. It doesn't go away. You can see it as a permanent attack buff if you want to, while still having the exhaust. Then here you have the draw 3 and reduce the cost of 1 card in hand by 1, just overall making you play your whole hand for 1 AP less depending on where it lands. Or you draw 3 and then you draw 2 at the start of the next turn, overall drawing 5, which is very powerful. Then a draw 1 activate preserve effect on all your cards in hand, meaning if you have 4 cards that have a preserve or retain effect, you can then activate each of their preserve conditions 1 time without having to wait until next turn, which could allow you to play cards the moment you pull them, or just make them even stronger in preparation for the turn after. And then here we have another unique card, meaning once again you won't be able to clone it, and that, as always, indicates a very strong card, because you cannot clone it at the end of a run and have multiple copies of it in your deck. So what you can do here is you can actually draw 3 cards for 0 AP 3 different times during a fight. So exhaust 3 just means after playing this card for the 3rd time, it finally gets exhausted and taken out of the rotation. Bringing us to the unlimited firepower, which at least at base value seems like the weakest card. we gain 150% shield, and then the next attack card you use deals 120% damage. Then for one turn your attack cards deal plus 80% damage. Now we're getting somewhere. This is the kind of card you wanna preserve all your cards for and then use it and then pretty much fire everything. Then the next card you use deals plus 160%, so just a straight up doubling of the base value. Then here you gain a 100% shield, and the next attack card you use deals plus 80% damage, but at least a cost reduction. And then a upgrade card, which might just save this card, and that is increases the character's attack card damage by 30%, which means that with that upgrade, this launcher does 30% more damage, this charge launcher does 30% more damage, opening found does 30% more damage, and charge shot also naturally does 30% more damage. So that might very well be by far the smartest investment. So now that we have kind of all of those out of the way and you have an idea on how she reserves and retains all these cards to get her way, what about the final upgrades? So the next upgrade is actually the basic attack upgrade, and that is, it looks the following. Basic card proficiency, you don't need to pull extra copies, you just need a bit of an extra resource, and that is you just add 20% to launcher and charge launcher cards, which once again are these cards right here. So charge launcher does 240 instead of 220, and launcher does 120 instead of 100. Bringing us to the A1, and that is a upgrade to heavy weapon specialist, which reduces the cost by 1, though this reminds me, I do believe I pulled an extra copy during the limited playtest, so the base version of this should be saying create opening and charge shot and grant them exhaust, whereas only the upgraded version reduces the cost by 1. Bringing us to the A2, or the third total copy, preserve card damage is increased by 20%. So preserve card damage refers to this: cards that increase their damage by being preserved. So for example, instead of preserving for just 100%, you're now going to be preserving for 120%. If you were to get a specific proficiency for opening found, you would then also preserve for an additional 120%. So overall, all the preserve effects just get an additional 20% bonus. Then we have the A4, so the fifth copy. The reason again is for a 4-star. The third and the fifth copy only add 6% to all cards played by this character, so 6% more shields, healing, and damage. So here we just get 50% extra AoE damage. Honestly, it's not much, it doesn't really blow you away, but it is a pretty decent upgrade. And then here for the finishing touch, liberated memory on the 7th copy of Beryl, who will be a launch 4-star, so at some point you will get that no matter what. Whenever a Beryl card is preserved, she gains a, I guess you could say, unique to her own buff. And that is when Beryl uses a attack card, she deals plus 50% additional damage per condensed stack to the target, and then removes all condensed stacks. So if you preserve 3 of Beryl's cards, then in the next turn your next card used will deal an additional 150% damage. So you can, you just get extra damage depending on how many cards you've preserved in the last turn. And this can also be triggered multiple times. If you use this for the first card, then use a card to trigger your preserve effects on hand. Use a second card, this condense will be stacked up again. So overall, what she really relies on is most likely being run with a secondary preserver. And the only one that really comes to mind for me would have to be Orleia right here. And I guess the only slightest problem with Orleia is that, as you can see it by her border, she actually is a 5-star. But there is definitely synergy there, especially in the preserve card realm. And what stops the devs from releasing more preserve cards? And also she does again have the extra attack tag, and that is something that is somewhat important to quite a few 4 and 5 stars respectively. So as always, we see each other in the next one. Peace!